All right, good morning, everybody. How's everybody feeling? Especially my panelist. How's my panelist? If I can have all of you turn on your webcams and make sure we can see you, we can hear you. Good morning.
Morning.
Hi, good morning. How are y'all?
Awesome. So it looks like we have, let's see.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning.
Perfect. So it looks like we've got well over 20 attendees here, including our panelists. We're waiting on a few of the panelists, but I think they'll get started in the second session. So we'll get started. So the plan that we have, and there we go, we've got more folks joining in. The plan that we have is session one, which is for about 15 to 20 minutes. We'll start off with Dr. Nicolas Rangel, who will start us off in talking about the verbal communications. Dr. Rangel, if you missed the morning announcement, you will share your screen, and we'll just we'll let you navigate your own PowerPoint there, and followed by session two with Dr. Danielle Stagg and Professor Lashunda Jenkins. So that will be followed right after session one. And then the third session with Mr. David Regenbaum. So, sir, I see you. I'm not yet sure I can hear you. David, do you want to do a quick audio check?
Morning, Ravi.
Excellent. Loud and clear.
Thank you.
That voice of experience. That's the one in my head. Thank you for joining us this morning. So this is great. So it looks like we've got about 30 participants now. So folks are joining in more and more. So thanks for being here. I've noticed Jordan Carswell is here as well with the West Houston Institute. Good morning, Jordan. You want to quickly check in with your audio? Let folks know
Good
you're here.
morning. Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Absolutely, we hear you. So glad you're
I'm
here. So
doing
Jordan,
double duty right now. So I've got you guys on WebEx and the Chancellor on Teams. So I'm prioritizing you all right now.
yeah, excellent. Thank you so much for being here. As I mentioned, what we'll do here is we'll have session one, followed by session two, and session three, followed by Q&A. So during Q&A, Jordan, just hang tight. We may have students with some questions about the West Houston Institute, maybe, and we'll love for you to help us answer those. So it looks like we're ready to go. So at this point, are there any questions from the panelists for me? We will basically pass the presenter ball to you. So in this case, I'll pass it on to Dr. Nick. I like that you've got a nickname there, Nick Rangel. So I'll pass it on to you, sir.
Okay.
And whenever you're ready, you can go. But any questions before he gets started?
No.
All right. Thank you so much. So not hearing any, I will go ahead and let you share your screen. The session is recorded and is also live streamed. Folks, if you've got any questions, there is a Q&A section. Feel free to send a message in there. I will be monitoring that Q&A, but I will be waiting till the end of the sessions during the Q&A part of the session to address them. But otherwise, enjoy the seminar. And Dr. Ringel, you're good to go.
I have one quick question.
Oh, go
As
ahead.
the
Go ahead.
speakers are presenting, do you want us to sign off our video or keep the video on?
You know, for the live stream, it'll be really nice to see you and hear you and have your slides. If that's appropriate, go ahead and do that. If for whatever reason or bandwidth and what have you, by all means, we much rather see your slides and hear you. So if bandwidth issues, feel free to turn it off. But if you don't mind, for the recording and for live streaming, let people see you. We got amazing people at HCC. All right.
Okay.
So are you ready?
Yes.
All right, take it away whenever you want. Share your screen, and you've got the presenter ball.
Okay.
Thank you.
All Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Nick Rangel. I'm the director of the Honors College at HCC Central. I am also an advisor for Phi Theta Kappa, the International Two-Year Honor Society, and I have been teaching public presentation stuff for a long time. So it occurred to me as I was constructing most of this, anytime I teach a class on public presentations, most students almost immediately know what constitutes a good public presentation. It's not hard, and it doesn't mean that they don't fight me when they receive grades on assignments indicating you failed to do this, because the truth is, an early assignment that I used to have students complete was, tell me what are the constituents of a good speech? What makes a good speech? And almost all of them identified things that I would think were consistent with a good speech. That said, beyond the formal education, I think that there are some things that can guide you based on actual practical experience. So the first area I want to talk about is language and word choice and why those are relevant. So when we talk about language, we're talking about verbal language. Now, most people mistake verbal and oral communication as being the same thing, and they're not. Oral involves literally any sound, but verbal is explicitly the use of language. So there are a lot of ways that I can engage in oral communication that would not necessarily be verbal, like say grunting. Grunting is a good example of oral communication that's not verbal. So linguistic choices that you make during your presentations will play a good role in determining your success and what you want to accomplish. So the first thing that I want to talk about are just a few maxims that I think should guide your work when you're talking about the language and word choice that you use in your particular presentations. So the first thing is I want you to value conversation over monologue. I think sometimes people view speeches as being almost a stagey, theatrical thing. I think that I would really identify effective speaking to audiences as something more akin to conversation plus or theatrical minus, or the language I use here is formally informal. It's better if you talk to your audience as though you're engaging in an extended conversation rather than a speech. We kind of know what speech sounds like. Today, I am going to talk to you. No one wants to hear that. People want to hear you engage in conversation as though you're speaking to friends. So you're going to be formally informal because you want to come off as likable and presentable. And those things play a role in how audiences see you. There is a good deal of research on likability. When people like you, they're more apt to perform for you. And when I mean like, I don't mean in the objective sense they're doing good work. I mean like as they like you, they see you as a person. So value conversation over monologue, and remember, you're going to be formally informal. Another thing I think that kind of exemplifies what formally informal is, many of you, I'm a little older, but I think I'm safe to say many of you have seen Sesame Street. You might remember the character Grover from Sesame Street. Grover has a particular pattern of speaking, and we can identify that pattern because Grover is engaging in formally informal presentation, or actually something more close to formally formal. Grover does not use contractions. Instead of saying I'm, he says I am. Instead of saying I'd, he says I would. And the truth is that if you're engaging in writing or you're submitting a written assignment, contractions aren't great. But if you are engaging in a speech with an audience, contractions make more sense. Grover sounds weird because he refuses to use them. He sounds overly formal. Contractions work. They help you engage with an audience. So after conversation over monologue in terms of your linguistic choice, the second thing I want to talk about are using rich descriptors to create immediacy. None of those are necessarily $10 words, although they may sound like it, but immediacy gets back into the notion of liking, but also into the notion of warmth. I want to create the impression that I'm in a warm environment, and I don't necessarily mean climate. I just mean use language that describes what it is that I want to tap into or reach into. In particular, when you're trying to sell people on your ideas and how your ideas might benefit stakeholders, notice how cold that language sounds. My project will benefit stakeholders in this way. You can say that, or you can say, there are a number of people who would really benefit from this, who would really enjoy this. People might get fed more, or people might enjoy a nicer life as a result of what I'm presenting, or they may not have to work as hard as they do right now. Like, there is language that you can use that will create a richer environment, especially because the screen takes a little bit away. We're not doing in-person presentations for obvious reasons right now. So the language that you use may in many ways be more important. It's easier to create a sense of warmth in person. It's a little bit more difficult to create it via telepresence. That said, then, you have the ability to use your language to create that notion of warmth. The fourth concept in terms of language and word choice is the idea of word economy. Word economy is critical. So this is a problem that strikes two types of audiences. I think it strikes audiences for whom English is not a primary language, and it also strikes audiences who have in their imagination this idea that being academic is different from being human. There is no good reason to use 10 words when 5 will do. I think that this is a problem that generally strikes, again, my students who speak and write English as a second language, is because they want clarity. So they think the more words they use, the greater the clarity will be in terms of the ideas they present. But unfortunately, that's often very far from the case. Using fewer words is often better, especially because, think about it, where does the idea for the competition come from? The ideas pitch comes from the elevator pitch. In the old elevator pitch, you had a fixed amount of time where you were in an elevator with someone to sell your idea. So word economy is critical. Again, don't use 10 words when 5 will do. And the last thing I want to talk about in terms of word language is metaphor. Good metaphor is your friend. Sometimes to relate things to people, we have to compare those things to other things that people are in fact very familiar with. You guys have probably all heard, what does this taste like? It tastes like chicken. That's a pretty good example of a metaphor. It helps someone to understand what it is you're talking about. When you're proposing a specific idea to people, comparing your idea to something they may already be familiar with is a good intellectual shorthand. So good metaphor will help you to reach out to audiences and help you to be clear, because sometimes the ideas, the linguistic ideas that are included in a metaphor, are good shortcuts to the thinking that people already use. So now let's talk about audience analysis, which is a little different when it comes to this competition than it might be in other contexts. Effective audience analysis, no matter the speaking situation, is always critical, but here it's a little bit different. So as I'll say here, in this case, the what and the why trump the who. So typically in audience analysis, you want to figure out who precisely it is you're talking to, because that will affect how you talk to them. Sometimes I think my students, again, they get trapped in the idea that the academic is different from real life, and they pretend they don't understand the concept of audience adaptation. What do you mean I speak differently to different people? Isn't that being fake? To which I would say, no, and in fact, you do it all the time. Because I would imagine every one of you in the audience speaks differently to your friends than you do to your parents. Or you speak differently to your romantic partners than you do to your parents. That's audience adaptation. I mean, we might use other words for it that are more accurate. Code switching is a form of audience adaptation, but it is audience adaptation. And here, this is different. You don't necessarily know a lot about your audience, but what you do know is what the rules are for the ideas pitch competition. So here, you're going to be less concerned with the who you're speaking to, and you're more concerned about the what and the why you're speaking to. Because the more that you can look to the competition rules and what the expectations are, the more you're going to fulfill the expectations of what the audience likely is. A second issue is jargon. I've noticed in my students who participate in the ideas pitch competition is they're usually speaking about ideas that are near and dear to them and that often fall within what they happen to be studying in school. But what that also means is there might be language that we use in particular fields that general audiences aren't going to be familiar with. So I guess in some ways, jargon might apply, but we could probably also effectively apply this to, remember I told you about metaphor before? So metaphor is also an element of not jargon, but of the slang you use. So I'm older probably than most folks in the audience. I'm very close to this half-century mark. And I think the impact that has is sometimes the metaphors that younger people use make less sense to me. For instance, the very first time I heard the phrase throwing shade, I didn't understand it because to me, living in Houston, where it's so hot all the time, how could putting shade on anything be bad? No, shade is good, it's cool. But no, clearly that's not what the metaphor throwing shade means. So avoid jargon, technical language, and you might also just avoid slang that tends to be more generational, that not everyone would necessarily understand. So third is to use the language explicit to the competition criteria to cue the audience. So this is about going again to the competition rules. So you might have had your idea before the ideas pitch competition. You saw the rules for the ideas pitch competition and you thought this would be the perfect opportunity to sell this idea to someone, to tell someone why this is a really important and good thing that I want to talk about. And you were probably right. But now you have to think about it in context of who your audience is. One thing that you have in common with them is you have the competition criteria and so do they. So if there is language specifically used in the competition criteria, you want to use that language as often as possible during the presentation so that they make the connection between what you're talking about and the things demanded by the competition. So look at it carefully, look at the critical words that are included in the competition criteria and make them an essential part of your presentation. Because an effective presentation will often cue the audience. You'll remind the audience that this thing is important. And remember, it is one of the commonalities that you share with the audience. You have the criteria available to you. They have the criteria available to themselves. So it would make sense if you shared that. So the last element I think that's important in terms of audience analysis in this case is for you to speak as a stakeholder. So I think one of the unfortunate things that often happens in pitches is that people will talk about stakeholders in a cold way, like stakeholder this and stakeholder that. And I'm going to use the word stakeholder because it's been drilled into my head. But sometimes if you speak about yourself or people like you as a stakeholder, that can be effective. It humanizes your pitch and who you're ultimately wanting to sell your pitch to. So it's important for you when you speak to speak as a stakeholder, to speak as someone who might in fact be affected by the advocacy that you're providing. So you're not speaking about it in isolation, but you're saying you might be a part of the community that benefits from this. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is developing a PowerPoint. I should mention, this is a fun point about HCC's Office of Entrepreneurial Affairs and my job here. So one of my current colleagues is actually one of my former students who helped develop these PowerPoints, James Duvall. James was one of my undergrads and working at the Office of, or HCC's Office of Entrepreneurial Affairs is Brenda Rios Brombacher, who was also one of my undergrads many, many years ago. So they've probably heard all of this before. And in fact, James used to mock me in class when he was one of my undergrads because of how rote some of these presentations were. PowerPoint is critical in presentations, so I just want you to note a few of the following. A PowerPoint presentation should supplement and not dominate the presentation. So here, you've mostly seen the PowerPoint and not me, but when I say that, you'll note my presentation hasn't solely been reading the slides. Because what I tell my students is that my internal voice is better than your actual vocal voice, because that's what we all pretend, right? Like the voice in our head is better than anything else. So why would I not read the slides in my own voice if there's so much to read, then wait for you to read them to me? And also remember, the audience's reading rate is faster than your ability to speak. So the PowerPoint shouldn't be overwhelming. It should just provide main points. Also, less is more. Color, effects, and media, all of those distract from the presentation. That doesn't mean in this particular case you wouldn't benefit from pictures, because if you're pitching a concept that needs to be visualized, this is where you'd use it. But I'm talking about the more extraneous things. I think all of you young people know this. You have a tendency to include 3 million GIFs in a presentation because you think they're hilarious, or memes. Less is more. Pictures of actual things will be helpful. And use minimal text because, again, you don't want to have to read. The audience can read your PowerPoints before you actually do. And the last thing is just rehearse with visual aids. Very few people do this, and you can almost tell it in presentation because they mess up as they go through it. So there is nothing better that you can do than to rehearse with your use of PowerPoint. It's going to be important. I had student presentations in my class yesterday, and I could easily tell the students who prepared in advance and the students who had not. And I think that difference is articulated in rehearsal. You can rehearse. And here's the thing with the ideas pitch, well, because these are being recorded, practice more than once. Practice recording yourself. It's a good opportunity that you often don't have in real world face-to-face public speaking interactions. So that is my portion of the presentation. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Ringel. That was fantastic. Great words of advice on verbal communication, word choice, audience analysis, and also having a clear and concise PowerPoint. Well done. Thank you so much. And you also were really good on time. So kudos to you. Students, you should learn from this. He kept it under his time and he delivered his message as he intended. So with that, I want to wrap up session one. So thank you, Dr. Engel. I'm going to kind of unspot you from the main camera here, and then we'll bring our next speakers on the stage here, Dr. Danielle Stagg, and then Professor Lashunda Jenkins. I'll go ahead and spot both of you on the stage. And whenever you're ready, go ahead and start sharing your screen. I will also pass the presenter ball. Is it okay to pass it to you, Dr. Stagg? Will you be sharing from your screen or?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, you've got the presenter ball to be able to share your screen. And whenever you're ready, take it away.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Absolutely. We see you, we hear you, and everything looks good here.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Danielle Stagg, and I am the Department Chair for Speech, Communication, and Sign Language at Houston Community College. I also have been teaching speech communication classes for more than 10 years at HCC. So it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I hope that you will walk away from this presentation today with some useful information. So the first thing that we're going to talk about here is the power of your voice. So your voice is your instrument. So if you think of a guitar player or a guitarist, if you think of a person who plays a piano, a pianist, they use those instruments to create the voice and to create the tone of their presentation. That is the same thing that you're going to do when you deliver your pitch, but you're using your voice. So your voice should express who you are and also what you want to convey in that presentation. It also should convey your confidence level. And there are four basic elements that you can use to create that tone or to create the instrument that you want to use for your presentation. So those elements that we're going to talk about today are going to be volume, pitch, rate, and pauses. Starting off with volume. People always wonder, how loud should I talk when I'm delivering a speech? Well, it's going to be dependent upon three things, but first let's take a look at the definition of volume. Volume is the relative loudness of the speaker's voice. Now, when you're delivering a presentation to an audience, your volume should be a little bit louder than your normal conversational volume. But how much louder is going to depend upon three factors. And the first factor is the size of the room and the number of people who are in that room. So the good thing about this year's pitch presentation is that it's virtual. So you're going to be delivering these presentations most likely from your home. So when you're thinking about your volume, think about the size of the room that you're in and also the level of background noise. Now, my neighbors, usually on Friday, they have their yard people who come and mow the lawn. So I was expecting to have to compete with that sound this morning, but thankfully they're not there. And I guess that's because of today's weather. But if they were outside cutting their yard, I would have to talk much louder than my normal volume because I'm competing with that level of background noise. The second factor that you want to consider is whether or not you're going to use a microphone. So if you're in a large auditorium and you're not going to be using a microphone, you would have to project your volume significantly. However, if you're in a smaller room, you would not have to make that much of a difference in your volume. The good thing about these virtual presentations is that we're using volume from our laptops, from our computers, from our headsets, and we have a microphone in these instruments that can project our vocal volume. So you don't have to talk or scream into your computer. And I try to tell my mom that all the time because when she's delivering a presentation, it's like she's screaming to the computer. But you would talk at your normal conversation volume because you have that microphone there. And then third, like I said, is the level of background noise. Imagine if you were delivering a presentation during a luncheon and people are eating and you have the sound of forks clanking and plates shifting about, you would have to speak at a louder volume. But again, because we're doing these pitch presentations in the comfort of our home, just consider your environment. And if there are any noises that you can control in that environment, try to control them. So that would mean turning off the TV, making sure there's no alarm chirpings, no radios, because you don't want to have to compete with that distraction. A factor about volume is that volume does impact your credibility. So typically, if a person speaks at a very low volume, people seem to think that that person is not confident and they're not credible. So please make sure that whenever you're delivering your pitches, that you are talking loud enough to where people can hear you. The second element of vocal variety is pitch. And pitch is going to be the range of sounds from high to low that your voice produces. Now, when you're using your pitch, you also want to keep in mind something called intonation. And intonation is the rising and falling of vocal pitch across phrases and sentences. So if you think of the word stop, if you just say stop, your pitch is kind of at a basic level. But you can use your intonation to change stop to a question to showcase excitement. And that's what you want to do when you're speaking. So if I want to change stop into excitement, I would say stop. So you see how the intonation went up? So it rose. And if I want to change stop to a question, I would use my intonation and say stop. So if you use a rhetorical question in your presentation, or if you say something like, oh my goodness, you want to use that pitch to showcase your level of enthusiasm. Now, something to keep in mind with pitch is that pitch is going to reveal your level of enthusiasm. It's going to express your concern for the audience, and it's also going to signal your overall commitment to the audience and to the occasion. Have you ever been present for a presentation? It could be a lecture, and the person who was delivering that presentation, you could tell that they did not want to be there. That was probably because they were not using their pitch. And if you're not using that pitch, it can come across as a monotone voice. And that's the last thing that you want your audience to hear. A monotone voice is like listening to a song that has one beat throughout the entire thing. So whenever you're delivering a presentation, try to vary your pitch and vary your intonation so that you can create that tone and that sound with your instrument that pulls your audience in. And that's especially difficult to do when you're virtual, so you really have to use that pitch. The third element is rate, and rate is the pace at which you convey the speech. Now, how many of you own a word timer? Everybody's hand should go up because we all can time our speaking rate. All you have to do is get something that you can read out loud. It could be a magazine, it could be a poem, it could be an article, and you're going to read that out loud for 1 minute. So time yourself reading that out loud. And then after you time yourself reading for 1 minute, go back and count the number of words. And you should have spoken 120 to 150 words per minute. Now, if you're speaking too fast, you can confuse your audience. So you don't want to talk too fast to where the audience feels like they are struggling to keep up with you. And also, if you talk too slow, you can bore your audience. And if you bore them, you can lose them. So when you're speaking, try to stay within that time frame of 120 to 150 words per minute. But that doesn't mean that you have to talk at 120 minutes or 120 words per minute the entire time. You want to change your rate up. So if you're talking about something exciting, you could speak a little bit faster. You ever notice how when you get really excited, you start talking fast? So if it's something exciting, talk a little bit faster to show that. And also, if it's something more somber and you want to create a serious tone, you want to make sure that you slow your rate down a little bit. Okay? The next element of vocal variety is pauses. And of the four elements of vocal variety, pauses seems to confuse speakers the most because people just don't know what to do with pauses. So a pause is going to be, it's going to help you to enhance the meaning of your presentation. It's going to allow you to have a punctuation mark when you're speaking. So when you're speaking, you want to have commas, you want to have periods, because those commas and those periods, it's going to emphasize a point. If you just said something that's startling and you want your audience to reflect on what you just said, or if you want to draw attention to what you just said, pause and give your audience a moment to think about what it is that you said. So if pauses are so effective, why is it that people don't use them? Well, unfortunately, many novice speakers are uncomfortable with pauses because there is a social stigma associated with pauses. People think that if you pause, that you forgot what you said or you don't know what you're talking about, and that simply is not true. You want to use effective pauses. Now, when I say an effective pause, that's going to be a 2 to 3 second pause compared to a 10 to 15 second pause. So use a 2 to 3 pause to draw that attention to what it is that you're saying. But instead of using natural pauses, people begin to cover up the pause and use something called vocal fillers or vocal interferences. And a vocal filler is when you say things like, um, uh, like I'm saying, like those types of things, they cover up the pause, but it's really a vocal distraction. So instead of using those vocal fillers, try to use a natural pause. Train your brain not to use those vocal fillers and instead get more comfortable with pauses. So those four elements, which again were volume, pitch, rate, and pauses, helps you to create the instrument of your voice. And if you want to be an effective speaker and to use vocal variety, make sure that you use those elements to demonstrate that. Now, the final thing that I'm going to talk about, we're moving on from talking about the voice, is to talk about professional dress. Now, these presentations are going to be virtual, so keep that in mind when you consider how you're going to dress for your pitch presentations. But do know that your appearance is going to impact your self-image, and how you feel about yourself is going to impact how you deliver that presentation. So have you ever woke up, and I know we all have, you just wake up and you have a case of the uglies. Nothing is going right. Your hair is not working out. You don't like what you put on. Imagine having to go and deliver a presentation and you feel just like you look horrible. You're not going to have the same level of confidence that you would have if you feel that you're looking good. Because when you look good, you feel good. When you feel good, you speak good. So try to make sure that you feel good about what it is that you have on when you're delivering that presentation. So for our virtual pitch presentations, we're really just focusing on the top and up because people can't see your shoes, but you do want to keep that in mind if you have to have a presentation that's going to be face to face. Try not to wear tennis shoes, don't wear open toe sandals. You don't want to wear any shoes that have scuff marks. So keep those things in mind. But for our virtual presentation, again, we're just focusing on the top and up. So a couple of things that you don't want to do when we consider professionalism in a virtual space is that you don't want to wear any jewelry that is too distracting. So if you have some huge earrings, don't wear them on that particular day that you're giving the presentation because they could be a visual distraction for your audience. You also want to avoid wearing t-shirts that have a whole bunch of words on them because instead of focusing on what it is that you're talking about, your audience would have a tendency to read the words that are on your t-shirt. Another thing that you want to avoid, caps and hats, because when you put on a cap or a hat, it can be difficult for the audience to see your facial animations and also to see your eye contact. Now, cats and hats are not the same thing as religious coverings, so please do not confuse the two. Also, you want to avoid wearing low-cut shirts. I always tell my students that I'm all about accentuating your assets, but you don't want to do it at the wrong time. You don't want to get attention for the wrong thing when you're delivering a pitch. The audience needs to be focused on your pitch and what it is that you're talking about, so don't show too much cleavage. You also want to avoid wearing too much makeup. You don't want a clown face, and the camera is going to take some of that off, but too much makeup can be a distraction as well. And if you were delivering a face-to-face presentation, try not to put your hands in your pockets because when you put your hands in your pockets, for some people, believe it or not, they think that that is disrespectful. My grandmother is one of those people. She thinks that a man should never put his hands in his pockets. So if you're delivering a face-to-face presentation, remember to think about your shoes, think about the pants or the dress that you're wearing, and also what do you do with your hands. And Professor Lashunda Jenkins is going to tell us more about that as she talks about how we can have effective communication and how we can use those natural gestures. Thank you. Okay, Ravi, I can turn it over to Professor Jenkins.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good morning, good morning. I am doing the segment on effective communication. Throughout this presentation, I will discuss that. I will discuss speaking with enthusiasm and the importance of nonverbal communication. So one may ask, what is effective communication? One thing that we need to know that effective communication is the backbone of public speaking. They are sisters and brothers in the neighborhood. They have to be together. So let's define what is effective communication. It is defined as exchanging ideas, with your thoughts, your knowledge, and information, trying to convey a message effectively and efficiently to another person. That other person is considered the receiver. So the person who is delivering the message is considered the sender. So that is extremely important that we understand that we have to convey a message in a way that the other end, which is the receiver, will walk away with full understanding. Okay. So we should know exactly what we want to say and know how to deliver that message to that person. Now, sometimes if we use the incorrect language, our message can be misconstrued. And that's when effective communication is not being displayed the correct way. And I'm sure that that has happened to many of us when we are talking amongst our friends, our coworkers, or our family, because you would say, well, I didn't mean it that way. Well, this is the thing with public speaking. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Our words have to align up accordingly in order to effectively communicate with someone. So we want our language to be able to reach our audience the right way so they can walk away with the full understanding of what your message was about. So let's talk about speaking with enthusiasm. Have you ever attended a meeting or an event, and the speaker was boring, boring. I am sure that all of us have attended a seminar, rather it's an interview sometimes or a family function, that the speaker was boring. It's because they were not speaking with enthusiasm. It's one thing that I like to tell my students: speak with style. Your style is a representation of you. It is part of your brand. When they see you, they see your voice, they see your delivery. So it is important to speak with some type of style. It allows you to connect with your audience, and it allows you to become one with them as well. Sometimes your audience can relate to you a little bit more if you can speak with some type of enthusiasm. One thing that sticks in my mind, and I love poetry. Maya Angelou stated, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel." Let that sit with you just for a moment, because that is extremely important. It is important because, again, with our words, we can warm someone up, we can build them up, we can tear them down. We can do all those things just with the way that we speak. Our job too as a speaker is to entertain the audience. Most speakers try not to look at it as a job, but this is something that we love to do. So when it is your purpose, you feel enthusiastic about it because you are, I like to say, the chief in charge. You're the boss on the stage. So your audience actually moves the way that you move. So if you're moving boring, boring, 9 out of 10, your audiences, they're ready to go. They're falling asleep. They're not being enthusiastic to even sit in the audience because you're not being able to reach them. So, in order to become a compelling speaker, we must adapt to the way our audience feels. We need to understand our purpose and why we are speaking. So that part also deals with your nonverbal communication as well. So part of us speaking with enthusiasm deals with a lot of our nonverbal communication. Our nonverbal communication and enthusiasm, it goes hand in hand. So think about all of the actors, the actresses, maybe some rappers or political people that you may know or watch on TV. When they actually stand up and they give a speech, they move the audience in the way that they want the audience to move. And the audience is being moved by their words. By their words. Barack Obama is a great example of a person who is speaking with style. Oprah Winfrey is another person who commands the stage when she speaks. Ellen DeGeneres is another example as well. These are people that you actually watch every day on TV. I don't know if you're a big fan of watching CNN, but if you even watch CNN, you will see various of these broadcasters speak with style because they have a message to deliver to the audience. And that is a way that we connect and we can walk away knowing, oh, wow, they did say it this way. I really feel that. You can feel some type of way when a speaker is speaking to you. I've not the importance of nonverbal communication. So nonverbal communication is defined as intentional or unintentional messages that are not written or spoken or sounded. Our body language is important. So I have 3 children. I have 2 boys and 1 girl, and I deal with nonverbal communication 24/7. For example, the rolling of the eyes, that is nonverbal communication. Stomping of the feet. I have a bunny that I've just adopted, and just understanding the language of a bunny, the bunny has a lot of nonverbal communication. I'm in the process of just understanding the life of a bunny. And you're going to say, well, Ms. Jenkins, how does this relate to nonverbal communication? Well, in order to understand the life of the bunny, we had to examine when she's hungry, when she wants to get out the cage, If she nibbles on the cage, that means she wants to get out and run around. When she's stomping in her cage, she's upset because she's frightened or someone is irritating her. It's the same thing when it comes to public speaking, okay? So speaking with your hands sometimes can show that you're enthusiastic about your presentation. You know, if you are not giving eye contact, that means you're not being connected to your audience. And now your audience is wondering, okay, she's the speaker, but she's not looking at us. So it's really important to find a focal point in your audience or in the environment that you're giving your presentation in order to connect with them. I always tell people, if you are nervous on stage when it comes to giving eye contact, find a cute celebrity or find your celebrity crush or someone in the audience that you don't mind looking at. Because this is the thing, old school, they always say, imagine people being without their clothes. Well, I don't want to imagine that. So I'd rather find my celebrity crush. So, and if I'm in the audience, I may see Denzel Washington, I may see Leo DiCaprio, I may see Brad Pitt. I may even see Barack Obama in the audience, but I know I have these people in the audience that now I can focus on them and deliver my speech, making me feel more confident on stage. So again, that eye contact is important. Also think about when you go on job interviews. When you are interviewing, that person is looking at you to, they're examining your nonverbal communication. So if you're not giving that interviewer your eye contact, they're thinking maybe this person really doesn't want this job. Maybe they're not prepared. So our eye contact means a lot. And I can even reference this back to my children. I teach them when mommy is talking to you, it is important to look at me in my eyes. Because when you're looking at me in my eyes, I feel more connected with you. I can tell if you're being truthful. I can also identify if you're being dishonest. So it's a couple of things that go on with our eye contact. Part two. So we have the eye contact, we have your posture. When you are speaking on stage, it is important to stand up straight. It is important to balance your feet on the ground. That builds up confidence. Now you're going to say, well, Miss Jenkins, we are speaking virtually. You're sitting down. Well, yes, I'm sitting down, but as I'm sitting, I have my shoulders up high. And no, you can't see my feet, but my feet are still placed to the ground. So if you were in a face-to-face environment, a face-to-face class, you would actually be standing up presenting behind a podium. You will also want to make sure that your hands are placed, again, not in your pockets, as someone mentioned, because I tell my students, if you're not giving a presentation on how to be cool speaking in with your hands in your pocket, where your hands do not belong in your pocket. They belong on a podium, or again, you can use your hand to emphasize your words. Remember, your audience is watching everything that you do on stage. Every single thing. Sometimes they're more fixated on your nonverbal than your message. Okay? So remember that. Another thing is good posture. It makes you feel more confident when you are having your shoulders back, your head up high, you're not looking down, you know exactly what you're doing. I like to say command the stage when you're speaking, because when you're on the stage, that is your platform, that is your baby, in other words, okay? So command the stage when you're speaking. You are the boss in charge at that moment. Again, if you have a message that you're trying to deliver to your audience, they expect you to speak with confidence. They expect you to have been prepared. They expect you to be knowledgeable about the subject matter at hand. So all of these things come into play when you're talking about having good posture. Okay? Another thing that we can do while we're on stage is balance exactly what we're going to say, how we're going to move, how we're going to connect with the audience. And the balance, again, it comes with practice. It comes with, again, speaking with style. It comes with giving eye contact. It comes with knowing your craft, knowing what you're going to say, knowing how you're going to move. And our body does so many things. And one thing that I like to tell people, especially my students, is when you are speaking or before your presentation, do some type of relaxation techniques. Rather, it's breathing, exercising, old school exercising with extending your arms out and rotating them like a little boat. Okay, these are things that you can do. You can have your moment where you breathe and you count 1, 2, 3. All of these things are crucial when you're on stage. Also, actors and actresses, they do vocal exercising. And you're going to say, well, we're not an actor, we're not an actress, but we are speakers. And so our vocal exercises are still important. We can also massage our face with our hands, and that loosens up your jaw muscles. You can extend your tongue out. Think about it when you were in elementary and someone is bothering you. Nanny, nanny, nan, that's what they're saying, and they're licking the tongue out at you. That is working our tongue muscles. All of these things is still nonverbal communication, but this builds up confidence when you're on stage. Again, people may not remember what you said, but they remember the things that you do. So that concludes my section of our presentation.
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Stagg and Professor Jenkins. That was amazing. You've given us lots to think about around the nonverbals, volume, pitch, rate, pause, beautifully said. And then we also learned about effective communications, speaking with enthusiasm and maintaining proper posture. Well said. Thank you so much for those wonderful insights. With that, I do want to be mindful of time. So very quickly, David, if I could have you take the presenter ball and share your screen. We want to leave some time for Q&A at the end, and uh, make sure that there are couple of students who have raised their hands, so just folks hang tight. We will, take the questions. We will allow everyone audio and video privileges in the Q&A section. But without further ado, session number 3 with Mr. David Regenbaum on business pitch presentation. Take it away, sir.
Thank you very much, Robbie. I've just been listening to the presentations of the former speakers and been enthralled by some of the concepts that they espoused and advised you on. Pitch presentations are something that we all do from a very early age. It's something that we do when we ask our parents for something. If you want to borrow a parent's car, you will think about whether you should ask the mother or the father on what basis you want the car, when you'll bring it back. All of these things you will think about in preparation for your pitch to your parent for borrowing the car. So pitch presentations is something that you do on a daily basis. It's something that you do on an ongoing basis. And in a business sense, it's something that you do to get business. So I will be speaking to a large extent on the business aspects of getting of the pitch. The first thing is, as Dr. Rangel said, be concise. An effective pitch uses enough words to convey the message, no more, no less. If you can reduce the number of words, do so. It's important that you know what words that you need to use to get that message across. The next one is being clear. People use acronyms, people use abbreviations. The audience doesn't always know what the acronym means or what the abbreviation means. You've heard from other speakers as well about the use of clear language. This is an essential part of what you convey when you're speaking. Be compelling. Make the audience want to listen to you. This is what moves an audience. think about how to move the audience in the direction that you want them to go. This is a fundamental factor in your pitch presentation. Credibility. Being credible is fundamental to acceptance by the audience. You have 7 seconds to be credible, to be regarded as a person that I want to listen to. Only 7 seconds. You've heard it, you've seen or heard the presentations about dress, about personal appearance. In order to be credible, you have to relate to the audience. And the first impression that an audience has of you is what sticks with them for the rest of your presentation. So in order to create that credibility, you need to dress properly, you need to appear appropriate. You heard the presentation about makeup, about earrings, about all of those factors. These are very important in your credibility from the audience's perspective. Your pitch should be conceptual to a great extent. The being conceptual, well, let me go back. The purpose of the pitch is to get the audience to do something or to accept something or to listen to you and ask more questions. So having a conceptual opening, having a conceptual pitch is what creates questions and answers. The conversation that you have with the audience becomes important if you give them hints of what you want to speak about and then give them concrete information. Although it's conceptual, it must be concrete. It must be customized for the specific audience. If you're speaking to a group of friends or you're speaking to a potential boss that you're looking for employment, think about who you're speaking to. That is important. Consistency. You need to be consistent in your presentation. You need to have the same message if you're giving the pitch for the same thing. And then, as Dr. Rangel said, be conversational. A pitch is not a screaming at the audience. It's not something that you do from a podium that you're screaming at an audience. This is something you want to be conversational. Speak a little louder if you're on a stage, but when you're talking person to person, try and be as conversational as possible. That is, again, something that will get your audience's attention and keep your audience focused on you. An elevator pitch. This is known as a 1-minute pitch. It's an elevator pitch. It has various names. There are various competitions that you're involved with in pitch presentations. Some competitions have 3 minutes, 5, 10, 15. But the initial headline, if you're looking at a newspaper, if you're looking at a presentation by someone who's expert in this thing, they will give you a headline. They will tell you what they're going to say to draw your attention. If you're looking at a newspaper, the article itself is prepared by the journalist, but the headline is prepared by the editor. The editor reads the article and then prepares the headline for the newspaper. The headline is your hook. It's the thing that gets the attention of your audience. Next, who are you? What do you have? What background do you have? What experience do you have that makes the audience want to do business with you or talk to you or offer you a job? This is relevant to your background. Your background is relevant to your pitch. Make the connection. What are you trying to accomplish? You must be passionate about what you're pitching. You must be enthusiastic. This is something that you know you can tell the audience about, and that you can really, the audience wants to do business with you, wants to employ you, and that connection is important, that you connect with the audience. And then finally, make the ask. Always, if you're going to ask for the position, if you're going to go to an employment situation, you want to ask for the job. Ask the person that's interviewing you, I would love to work with you. What else do you need from me to achieve that? So asking is an important piece of your pitch. Very often you see someone give a great pitch, but there's no ask. The audience or the person that they're speaking to doesn't know what they want. So if you're selling something, if you want something, if you want a job, you need to ask the audience. And by audience, it could be one person, but you need to ask what they want. And then finally, close out with a relevant statement, not something that is supercilious or not relevant to the position that you're looking for. These 7 keys to a great pitch were created by Megan Eddings. She is the founder and CEO of Excel Lifestyle. She won the pitch competition at HCC. She won the pitch competition at City of Houston liftoff competition, and she is just an incredible presenter. First of all, she said, have confident body language and voice, your posture, your smile, the way you move, your eye contact. All of these are relevant. One of the speakers spoke about the appearance when you're seated with your just the top part of your body visible. This is what happens when you're doing a virtual pitch. But if possible, do it standing rather than seated. There is a huge difference between being seated and your presentation and your energy when you're standing and pitching in front of an audience. From a business point of view, show that there is a market and why you are providing the best solution. Your solution must be something that the audience wants. Next, credibility. What expertise do you have? What is the value of you and your background and your team, if you're working with a team, to the audience? How can you help them create or get what they want? Be realistic with projections. Don't exaggerate. Be factual, be concise, but be factual. And then practice. Videotape your pitch many times. Stand in front of a mirror and practice your pitch. Do this on an ongoing practice basis. It's important that you understand how the audience sees you and how they view you while giving your pitch. Simple and concise slides. The slides should have, and the previous speakers have said this, and I'm guilty on this slide of having too much information, but look at your slides and create slides that are interesting and deal with your topic that you're pitching. And then finally, first impressions will be you, not your pitch. So always look professional and be professional, be well-groomed and well-dressed. These are the 7 aspects of a great pitch, according to Megan Eddings. And as I say, she is the winner of several pitch competitions. The previous speaker also spoke about the why, the how, and the what. To me, and the why is the most important aspect of your pitch. Why are you the best solution? Why should I employ you? All of the whys are the most important facets. How you do it, most people know. What you do is very basic. The why is makes the difference, is a differentiator between just a normal pitch and a very boring pitch, and why I should actually do business with you or employ you or give you what you're asking for. So the why is absolutely essential. This concept comes from Simon Sinek, and I will give you a reference in this pitch presentation to YouTube videos that he produces. Great presenter, and very well done YouTube videos. As I've said before, practice, practice, practice. No professional, no one excels without practicing. Sportsmen, whether you are J.J. Watt, whether you are a soccer player, a basketball player, or whether you're just an individual that is trying to excel, pitching in front of the window gives you that information, gives you that appearance of knowing what you're doing, and gives the audience a sense that they'd like to do business with you or work with you in the future. This is a process that I have found very effective using Post-it notes, brainstorming all of your ideas, thinking of every facet of what you want to present. Look at it from a brainstorming point of view, speak to family, friends, whoever, and get as many ideas as you can on your pitch presentation topic. Post them on Post-it notes. And then when you have this myriad of Post-it notes, you select the 5 most important Post-it notes and use that as your initial pitch. There is too much information. Once you become the expert, once you become the knowledgeable on everything there is to know about your pitch, use the Post-it note basis to separate the information, general information, from the specific information that the audience, or when I use audience, I'm talking about possibly one person, possibly 1,000 people. It makes no difference. Think about the audience and present to the audience. I was amused recently when I saw my granddaughter give a pitch, and she used her mother as the medium for the Post-it notes. She stuck Post-it notes all over my daughter and selected the most important ones. So she used her mother for the brainstorming exercise. It's a very easy way of separating the non-essential part of your pitch from the essential part. Being concise, this is the way to help you be concise. So your 1-minute pitch exercise that I would urge you to consider as a practice, as a method for creating pitches, is select the 5 most important facets of your pitch to use in your 1-minute pitch. Don't bury the lead. By that I mean, what is the headline? What is the most important element of your pitch? And use it as a headline, the way a newspaper creates a headline. Team up with friends and family members, present your 1-minute pitch until they are bored with listening to you. But listen to their questions. Ask them for feedback. Ask them for ways you can improve it. It's important that you get as much critique as possible so that you can improve your pitch on an ongoing basis. PowerPoint effectiveness, start by creating an outline. Looking at your PowerPoint, what do you have in mind? Very much like presenting your pitch, and taking that pitch and looking at the most important things and create that outline. Use contrasting colors. Use big enough font that the audience can read. Don't move text, and turn the pointer off. When you see this kind of situation, people using the pointer, it's just distracting. It's not effective on that basis. Use visuals instead of text. Have slides at the end of the presentation, so in case you go over, you have an effective way. These outlines, these 10 secrets for using PowerPoint pitch can really make a difference in your pitch. Here is an appendix of some of the videos, some of the TED Talks that are valuable to you in creating the pitch. The first one is the Simon Sinek pitch that I mentioned to you, why we do it, the why in how to in the pitch presentation. The next is the video presentation of Megan Eddings when she did the City of Houston Liftoff Fund competition. Another example of a 60-second pitch we found at YouTube at this link, and then the 10 secrets, giving a lot more explanation than I've given you on effective use of PowerPoint. That concludes my presentation. I hope it was useful to you and that it will benefit you in your future pitch activities. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, David. That was fantastic. You told us a lot about what is a pitch and suggestions for pitching your idea. Great examples that you've shared. Dr. Stagg, I'm going to ask, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask, give all the students the permission to be able to unmute themselves and ask away. You will see in the participation panel people that raise their hands. For example, I see Frozan has already raised his hand. If you have questions for the audience here, go ahead and raise your hand, and then Dr. Stagg, when you see their names, just call them out. They will be able to unmute themselves. And I have given all the students access to share their video and audio. So just we'll now go into the Q&A section. And by the way, the seminar is done, so you are free to go if you like. But if you have questions for our amazing speakers, please do raise your hand and ask.
Okay, Frozan does have his hand up. So Frozan, what's your question?
Actually, I have no question. I'm so sorry, it was a mistake. But I just want to say thank you so much. It was really helpful, and you guys been so helpful for each section. And I really appreciate each of you guys for this seminar.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day, guys. Thank you so much for everything.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Questions or comments? Okay, well, we have one from Dr. Angela Anderson.
What? That's cheating.
Good morning, y'all. I had another meet. I'm stepping out of another meeting to talk to everybody this morning. I guess you could say I was multitasking. I have to say that what I was able to listen to, y'all did a fantastic job. I even learned something. So if you want to see my notes, I've been taking notes over here because now I'm going to employ a lot of what I heard in my class. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this and showing how important it is to know how to really reach your audience through and look at your nonverbals and your effective communication and your tone and your pitch and all those cool things that we teach you in speech communications. So I just wanted to say that, and you guys are awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And like Dr. Anderson says, we do teach these concepts and skills in our communication classes. So please take a speech or a communication class if you want to learn more about it.
So when real world resumes, I've seen Mr. Regenbaum at a number of events. I've never heard him speak, so when he had an accent, I was, oh my God, that's so cool. So it's strange that I've seen you at events for years, and I've never heard you speak. So that was kind of cool.
Actually, we all have accents, just different accents.
It's very true. Mine is very Southern California, so.
Having an accent has been a benefit to me because it differentiated me in business from all my competitors. And for that reason, I've never tried to adopt a Texas accent. Although I've lived here for 42 years, I still have that South African accent that I originally came with, and use the aspects of your character, personality, or whatever that you have to your advantage.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Don't try to be anybody else. Be true to yourself. Use natural gestures. Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any other questions. It's been a fabulous time being here with you all. Oh, I do see some hands raised. Joy Humoro.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I learned a lot. I just have one question. If you have an audio presentation and you have to speak in front of a computer, do you have to use the same method of that you just talked about? Like if it's not a video presentation, it's just an audio. Do you have to use the non-verbal cues and everything?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you don't have video, you're still going to use those nonverbal elements of voice, like your pitch, your rate, your tone. Because you don't have video, you're not going to have to focus on your use of gestures and eye contact, but you still have to use your voice to create that tone that you want to create for your speech.
Thank you very much.
Exactly. And one thing I like to tell my students, we can't see you, but we can hear you. So always think about that. Someone in the audience probably can't see, but your voice is being heard. So all of the things that we discussed today are utterly important. So just keep that in mind. Someone probably cannot see you, but they're always going to be able to hear you.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor.
Okay. Thank you, Joy, for your question. We also have Chinyavu has her hand up, his or her hand up. Chinyavu, if you could unmute yourself. Chinyavu, we're unable to hear you. Okay, I'm going to go on to another hand, and that is Anika Gordon. Anika, if you could unmute yourself.
I just had a question on, do you guys have any tips for like paraphrasing? Because I know you guys mentioned earlier that you like to keep if you have a PowerPoint short and sweet. Do you have any tips on paraphrasing, like, I guess maybe like a topic with a lot of information to get your point across?
So, Anika, do you know what the AP writing style is?
I think so.
So basically, if you go pick up any newspaper, the AP writing style occurs kind of in a triangle where you have the general information first, and then it tends to get more specific. But a good newspaper article is written so that if I read like the first sentence or two, I would know everything generally that I would need to know. And I think the same generally applies to paraphrasing too. Like if you read a lot of good journalism, you'll kind of get a hint as to how people take these big, huge stories, right, and just summarize them, because a good, lengthy news story, you'll have the most pertinent information in the first paragraph.
Thank you.
Right, and it discusses the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why, and the how, all in that first paragraph, yes.
And that sometimes when I am presenting, I end up like rambling or talking about stuff that, I don't know, like adding extra information, even if it's not on the PowerPoint. I just kind of like go on long tangents. So I just want to make sure that I get all information. So I do have a question about like reading directly from like also like using words and more personalized the way to like I get when and where.
Well, in speaking, you should never read directly from your script. We are trained to speak from an extemporaneous style delivery. Okay, so that means you pretty much have prepped what you're going to say, and your PowerPoint is basically for your audience. So I would suggest that you just make little key points for yourself. In our classes, we like to tell our students to make a keynote outline, okay, or a topic sentence outline. And it gives you just your pointers of the things that you want to discuss. And that also allows you room to ad lib as well. But most importantly, just speak from an extemporaneous style of delivery. Because again, Dr. Stagg mentioned about being monotone. So when you're reading from your script, you become monotone. And I spelled out the word boring, B-O-R-I-N-G. That actually happens because you're being dependent upon your script. So never depend on your script at all.
Thank you, Anika. That was a great question. Anybody else have any other questions? I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A. Does anybody see any other questions out there? Okay.
All right. So with that, I'd like to just let everybody know about the competition uh, website, which is hccs.edu/pitch. I'll put it in the chat for everybody. And if you can go ahead and register for the next sessions that we have coming up, as well as, and you know what I should do is let me go ahead and share the the, uh, the website so we can show, and then looking forward to all of you participating in this semester's Ideas Pitch competition. So give me a second here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just to walk all of us through quickly on the process. Let me make sure be able to see my screen. I think we've got the music and we've got Google Chrome. Okay, so here's the pitch competition flyer. As you have probably already seen, May 20th is when everything is, we're going to have our finals presentation. You want to submit before the end of this month for your pitch competition. And again, there's the website. I'll share with you, when you go to the website and you scroll down, some of you have to click on the plus to actually see more information. Okay, so I've noticed some students don't realize that they have a whole host of on-demand trainings available to them. They can watch these, and then there's also the information about the judging criteria. What will you be judged on when you do your presentations? And there's also a sample template that you can download, and then you can hear from former contestants right there, YouTube embed videos. And you can also see the full ceremonies of the past competitions here as well. So the form is right underneath all of that. Just need to fill this information out, upload your presentations, upload your, if you've got any graphics, go ahead and do that, and then submit as you're done. So with that, that's pretty much it. For this session, I thank you. I want to especially thank David Regenbaum, Dr. Stagg, Ms. Jenkins, and Dr. Rangel, all of you for making the time and sharing your wisdom for our students at HCC. They'd be lost without you, and I'm so glad that you offered them some important tidbits here. So thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate all of you here. Looking forward to seeing all of you at the Ideas Pitch competition this semester. So with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ravi.
Bye all.
And thank you all. It's been a pleasure being with you.
Same. Bye all.
Bye.